Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar titled Couples and Money, Learn the Secrets of Financially Happy Couples. I'm Julie Klepak, the Business Development Representative and Certified Financial Counselor, and I'll be today's moderator. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items to help you participate in today's event. We have taken a screenshot of an example of the attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on your own computer desktop in the upper right corner. To expand or collapse your control panel, click the orange arrow button. You're listening and using your computer's speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select phone call in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. All attendees are muted for today's webinar to eliminate background noise for the listening enjoyment of everyone. Click the handouts arrow to view or save the documents from today's webinar. To ask questions during the meeting, please click the questions arrow and type your question inside the panel box. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the question and answer session at the end of today's presentation. Now, I'm going to turn the webinar over to your presenter, Robin Lind. Robin is a certified financial counselor, the credit union's education coordinator, and manager of the student credit union program at Northwest and Colerain High Schools. Robin, the floor is all yours.
Thanks, Julie. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Couples and Money, Learn the Secrets of Financially Happy Couples. I'm Robin Lynn from COPFCU, and I'm looking forward to sharing some great information with you today. As Julie mentioned, all attendees are on mute at this time to eliminate background noise, but I encourage you to ask questions through the chat window, and Julie will be keeping an eye on that for me throughout the webinar. It's no secret that money arguments can put a huge strain on your relationship. Money is a touchy subject and it can carry a lot of emotional baggage. So if you have money disagreements with your partner, you are not alone. Now let's start with the good news. 7 in 10 couples say that they generally communicate very well with their partner, and 1 in 4 say they communicate exceptionally well. And 2/3 of couples indicate that they discuss some aspect of their finances at least monthly. And being able to talk to your partner about money is a critical factor in a person's happiness in their relationship. 54% of people in great marriages say that they talk about money daily or weekly, while only 29% of people in okay or in crisis marriages talk about it often. And not surprisingly, 1/3 of married couples admit to arguing about finances at least once a month. You know, money is a big part of sharing your life with someone, and if you aren't able to discuss it calmly and feel like you're on the same financial page, at the very least, it can lessen your satisfaction with your relationship, and at worst, it could land you in an impasse. So let's start with a question. What is your biggest money issue in your relationship right now? Is it that you frequently argue about money, or you can't talk about money without it becoming a fight? Maybe you disagree on how you should spend your money, or you disagree on your financial goals, like how much money you should have in your savings or your retirement accounts. So type your answer in the chat box, and while we're waiting for our answers to come in, we'll talk about what we're going to cover in today's webinar. First, we're going to talk about how to start the money conversation. Both of the people in any relationship bring with them different financial experiences and histories, which gives them different perspectives on saving and spending and different goals and money anxieties and different ideas of an acceptable level of debt. So we'll talk about how to have calm, honest conversations with each other about our financial experiences and values and how to overcome different money attitudes and habits. Next, we'll talk about how to assess your financial situation. Then we'll talk about how to deal with another very high stress issue for a lot of couples, how to deal with debt. Next, we'll talk about how to create a spending plan that focuses on shared priorities and goals and make sure that both of you feel like you're equal partners in your money decisions. And finally, we'll talk about what steps you can take if it still isn't working. Now, as with anything in a relationship, clear, honest conversation and communication is the key to having a good money partnership. But statistics show that couples would really rather talk about anything but money. And we saw on the first slide that a third of couples admit to arguing about finances at least once a month. So why is it so difficult to talk about money? Well, for starters, money symbolizes different things to different people. It can symbolize power or control, security, and love, just to name a few, and it can reveal the deepest aspects of our personality and our insecurities. Money can also reflect power struggles and the withholding of affection, and it can be also, a source of pride and shame for people. And I'm seeing this reflected in some of the answers that I'm seeing coming through. I see that some of you feel like you can't talk about money without one of you becoming angry. You have different spending habits, someone said. So maybe one of you is a saver and the other is a spender. So how do you overcome the emotional baggage that comes with money and learn how to have positive, productive conversations about money? So the first step is going to be to schedule these conversations. Don't try to do this when you're angry or you're already arguing about something. So don't open your credit card bill and decide that this is a fantastic moment for you guys to talk about this. And don't just spring it on your partner one day. You want both of you to be mentally prepared to have this conversation. So set a date that you both agree on. Pick a time when you have a sitter and there won't be any distractions, and maybe make it as part of a date night. So schedule your first conversation to only last an hour so it doesn't feel too overwhelming. And then have plans to do something afterwards, something fun. It's critical for both of you to go into these conversations with an open mind. Treat the first several conversations as if you're just trying to learn about each other with no judgment on what your partner thinks or what they know or what they don't know. You are just fact finding here, just trying to find out what they think. So in the handouts, I included a list of money conversation starters. I've grouped the questions into different sections from money values and money attitudes to lifestyle choices and logistics. So print this out ahead of time and give it to your partner so they know what to expect. And definitely don't try to cover all of these questions in one meeting. Maybe just cover the first section in your first conversation and then schedule meetings to talk about the other sections later. The key is to keep this light and keep it conversational. Remember, you're just trying to learn about each other. And if things get tense, stop and try again another time. Your goal is to listen to your partner's story and to understand where they're coming from and why they view money the way they do. So asking questions like, how much did you worry about money as a kid? Or how did your parents treat each other about money? And learning who handled the money and paid the bills in their childhood home can give you some great insight on your partner's money motivations. So maybe you'll find out that, they grew up in a house where mom took care of the money and paid the bills, and they just thought that's the way things would be in their house. A big factor that you're going to want to pay attention to in these conversations is money fears. We all have money anxieties, and these fears can really drive our attitudes toward money and what we do with it. There's a relationship expert, Dr. Les Parrott, who talks about some of the common money fears that people experience. The first one is having a lack of influence on their money. So this is when people don't think they know what they're doing when it comes to money, so they don't feel like they can have any input on the financial plan. So maybe they don't understand investing, so they stay out of it, even if they do want to be involved. Another common fear is feeling a lack of respect in regard to money. And this can be when one spouse does the majority of buying in one area. So maybe the grocery shopping or the cars, and the other partner feels like they can't have any input because they don't know as much about this area. The next common fear is a lack of security. This is a fear that if something were to happen, maybe a job loss or an illness or an emergency, there won't be enough money to handle the issue. Now, this is a very real fear, and it might be why someone would open a secret bank account or have a secret credit card. Maybe they're afraid of losing control, or they're afraid that they're going to run out of money. And finally, there's the fear of not realizing your dreams. Maybe you've always dreamed of having a house in the country with some acreage or a boat or a classic car, and there's this fear that you've had this dream and you aren't going to be able to make it come true. And these fears can dictate a lot of our money decisions. So it's critical to make sure you understand your partner's fears. So through these first few conversations, your goal is to learn about your partner's motivations and values surrounding money and understanding their anxieties. And there's no right or wrong here. We were all brought up with different experiences and different values. So we all have different wants and needs when it comes to our money. And hopefully, just by being aware of where each other is coming from, you'll come to an understanding on some of the financial issues that you've been struggling with in your relationship. So maybe as a result of this conversation, you'll learn that your partner actually isn't trying to control you or your spending. Maybe they grew up worrying about not having enough money and they just need the security of having a certain amount of money in savings at all times. Or maybe your partner shuts down every time you try to talk about money, but you find out that they grew up in a house where their parents argued about money all the time and they just, they want to avoid that. Or maybe in their house, money was something that was rare and it was supposed to be enjoyed while it was there, so they immediately want to spend any money that you might get in a windfall, like your tax refund or your bonus, instead of saving it or investing it. And the other goal of these meetings is to get the hang of having regular, non-adversarial conversations about money so you'll both feel comfortable talking about money issues when they arise. So establish regular check-ins about your accounts and your spending plan. Maybe in the beginning, as you get started, you'll want to meet monthly or bi-monthly. And as you start getting the hang of it and you feel pretty confident that you're on the same page, you can push that back to meeting quarterly or annually. So after you've had a few conversations and you've gotten the hang of being able to talk about your money calmly and hopefully have a better understanding of your partner's money beliefs, your next step is going to assess your current finances. Now, this will probably be the least fun part of this journey, but it's essential to know exactly what you're dealing with so you can get to the fun part, which is deciding how to spend your money. So step one is to calculate your income. In your handouts, I've included a worksheet to help you with this step. So the top section is going to help you figure out how much you bring in each month, because knowing how much you can spend starts with knowing how much you bring in. So aim for a 6-month average to account for all aspects of your income. So first you're going to fill out your salary and your spouse's salary if you both work. And then next, be sure to include any extra income that either of you earns. So if you're a teacher, you might earn a coaching or an advisor stipend, or maybe you have a summer job or seasonal income fluctuations. Maybe you're in a profession where you do side jobs or you refinish furniture and sell it. So any extra income that you earn, make sure you include that. And then don't forget to include any child support or alimony that you might receive. Next, you're going to need to calculate your expenses, and this is the lower part of the worksheet. Now, our worksheet has a lot of categories. These are just suggestions. Just fill out whatever you can to get started. So we've divided this into fixed and variable expenses. Your fixed expenses are going to be expenses that you have to pay, like rent or mortgage, your utilities, your cell phone, daycare, student loans. And then your variable expenses are going to be costs that you have a little bit more control over, like your groceries, your clothing and grooming, your entertainment. Now, limit this step to the past 6 months too. That should give you a pretty broad picture of what you've spent, and you can use your credit card statements and your bank statements to fill this in. And then going forward, using an app like You Need a Budget or Mint or a program like Quicken with your bank and credit card statements can really help you keep track of your money. You'll upload your statements, and at first you're going to have to categorize your spending in the beginning, and then it'll start doing the labeling for you. So you'll wind up with this great spreadsheet where you can see exactly what you've spent on any category at any given time. Now, again, this is probably going to be one of the hardest parts, and it might start to bring up some of the money arguments you've had in the past. And it might be hard to see what you've actually spent on things, but think of it this way. This is stuff that you've already done. You've spent an average of X amount of dollars on clothes or shoes or entertainment every month. So there's no point in arguing about this now. The purpose of doing this is to figure out how to do better going forward and making sure that you spend your money more intentionally. Now, another critical part of assessing your finances is to pool your credit reports. Everyone should pool their credit reports once a year. There are 3 credit bureaus. Be sure to pool each one and compare them. We see mistakes on credit reports all the time, so make sure you pull it every year and check it over to make sure there's no fraud and there aren't any errors. And especially if you plan to take out a loan, it's a good idea to get your credit report about 6 months ahead of time so you have time to dispute any inaccuracies and get them corrected before you apply. Another important thing for you to do is to assess your insurance and make sure that you're well covered for any event. This includes having the correct coverage for your cars and for your house, and enough life insurance to make sure that you're both taken care of if something happens. So if you're older, that might include getting long-term care insurance and supplemental health insurance. And if you're younger, having enough life insurance to ensure that your family is taken care of so they won't have financial difficulties or have to have a change in lifestyle if something happens to one of you. And along with that, make sure that you have your estate planning in order. Talk to a tax advisor or an attorney to ensure that each of you is taken care of in the event of illness or death. So make sure you have the correct beneficiaries on your accounts, decide on power of attorneys for your finances and for your medical decisions, and make sure you have a current will or trust. And you should also create a grab and go box with your important papers and information so both of you know exactly where your financial records are and how to access them. So by doing these things, you're getting your financial house in order so that everyone is taken care of the best that you can plan for, which can really help with a lot of the financial anxieties that people have. Now, in the process of assessing your finances, the issue of debt probably came up. And as you can see by this study by Dave Ramsey, the amount of debt you have as a couple can really affect your relationship. For couples that have less than $10,000 in debt, only 23% say that money is the main thing they fight about, while almost half of couples with more than $50,000 in debt say it's the main issue. So it's important to come up with a plan to reduce your debt. So the first step is going to be to figure out exactly how much you owe. You'll want to create a spreadsheet to total it all up and keep track of it as you pay it off. So for each debt, you're going to list what the debt is in your debt description. So either the credit card name or the loan and type, whether it's a personal loan or a home equity loan or your student loan, etc. Then you're going to list the payoff amount for each one. Next, you're going to list the APR. And finally, you're going to put in your current minimum monthly payment for each one. Now, again, this step might seem overwhelming and it might be hard to see the total amount of your debt in black and white, but I love this quote from one of my favorite financial people, Ramit Sethi, who wrote the book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. Making a plan turns debt from a hot emotional topic into a cool math problem, and making a plan gives you control. So once you have a definitive list of exactly how much you owe, you can start to make your plan. So if you have debt, you'll need to decide how you want to pay it off. Credit cards and loans all have different interest rates, which might affect how you decide to pay it off. So here you'll see listed two different methods. The first method is the snowball method. Now, keep in mind, for both of these methods, you're going to always pay the minimum payment on all of your debts every time. But with the snowball method, you're going to attack the debt that has the smallest balance first. So you're going to put any extra money that you have toward that debt. And then once that debt is paid off, you're going to take the money you were paying on that debt plus the minimum payment on the next smallest balance, and you're going to attack that one. And you're going to keep doing that until all of your debts are paid off. Now, the other method is the standard method, or sometimes you'll hear it called the avalanche method. In this one, you're going to pay off the debt with the highest APR first, and then the next highest APR, and so on, which will save you money overall. Now, both of these methods work, and it's a fierce debate with financial experts, so it's really just a matter of personal preference. Technically, the snowball method isn't the most economical approach because the debt with the lowest balance might not have the highest APR, but on a psychological level, it's really rewarding to see your debts get paid off, which in turn makes you feel that you can pay off the others. So you get to have these small victories along the way, and you really get to feel like you're getting somewhere. But the standard method will save you money. Mathematically, it's best to pay off the debt that's costing you the most. So the bottom line is to just pick a method and get started. So whichever one works best for you and your situation and personalities. Now, there are a lot of other factors, obviously, to getting rid of debt, which I unfortunately don't have enough time to go into right now. But if you want to learn more, be sure to check out our webinar that we did in the fall called Fear No More, Tackle Your Debt. where we really get into debt and how to get rid of it, like where to find extra money to pay down your debts and ways to find more money in your budget. And you can find that webinar at copfcu.com/webinars. So now we need to figure out the logistics of how you're going to handle your money. And these questions are in the last section of the Money Conversations handout. So first, what is the best way for you as a couple to handle your money and your accounts? Now, there are a lot of different ways to handle this, and we really don't have time to cover every scenario, so we're just going to touch on a few options. The first option is to have totally separate accounts, and each of you just pays for certain things. So either 50-50 or you do it based on your income percentages. Now, I don't love this one because it can lead to relationship problems. It can cause resentment if one partner earns a lot more than the other and you split things 50-50, so they have a lot more discretionary income the other. And simple things can cause disagreements, like who's going to pay for dinner or vacations or the kids' braces. And it just seems like there are a lot more issues and a lot more conversations that you have to have with this arrangement, which inevitably can lead to more arguments and tension. And if one of you experiences a job loss or goes part-time or starts working or stops working for a while to raise the kids or maybe take care of a sick parent, then you're going to need to figure out a new system. And your relationship really should be a partnership, and having totally separate finances doesn't really support the we're in this together spirit that makes things work. Now, another option is to have everything joint. Joint accounts make a lot of sense because presumably you're doing everything for the good of the family, like paying the mortgage, vacation and dinners out, and all of your bills. And it also makes sense. It makes it easier to see the full picture because it's all right there, and it leads to a lot of transparency in your relationship. Everything you spend is right there in black and white. And joint accounts can also help in the event that one person passes away. All of the accounts are already in both names, so access to the money for the surviving spouse is easier. But having all joint accounts also has its drawbacks. It can really make you feel a loss of independence. If you've been spending money however you want on whatever hobbies or interests you have, suddenly having to answer to someone can make you feel like you don't have control anymore, and even your smallest purchases are being scrutinized. So another option is to have a hybrid approach. In this approach, you're still going to have one joint account where both of your paychecks are deposited, and you'll use that for all of your bills and expenses. But you'll each have your own separate checking accounts for discretionary spending. So basically, you're going to get an adult version of an allowance each month to spend on whatever you want. So you'll choose an amount that works for you as a couple, maybe $200 a month or $500 a month, and you can save it or spend it on things that matter to you. So you can feel free to buy that kayak you've had your eye on, or get a massage, or maybe you save up your money for a girls' trip or a guys' weekend. So this way you retain some of your independence, but you also have the transparency of having a joint account for most of your expenses. Now, one rule with this version, though, is you can't judge what the other person buys with their money. It's theirs to do whatever they want with. Next, do you want to have any spending rules? For example, a lot of couples have a rule that they'll discuss any purchases over, say, $250 or $500. And again, this isn't about power in your relationship. It's about respecting your partner and realizing that purchases that you make affect your partner and the whole family. So if you go out and buy something expensive like a Peloton or a car, something else is probably going to have to give in your budget. And it's really not fair to make that kind of decision without consulting your partner. So deciding on some money rules up front might help you reach a common understanding and avoid disagreements in the future. And then finally, you'll need to decide, if you haven't already, who's going to handle all the bills and who's going to balance the checkbook, quote unquote. Not that most of us do that these days, but who's going to check your accounts and your credit card statements and make sure there aren't any errors or fraud. And then finally, who's going to be in charge of your savings and your emergency fund and your retirement accounts like your 401ks, and making sure that you're well prepared. Now, just make sure in this step that both of you are involved in this step and you both know the whole picture, regardless of who is actually in charge of it, especially for women. Generally women live longer, so you need to make sure that you know exactly what you have and where it is and how to access the account in case something happens. So now is the fun part. You've had the conversations and hopefully gotten a better understanding of each other and what's important to you, and you have a pretty good idea of how much money you have each month. So now you get to decide how to spend it. So first you're going to need to create your spending plan. And a spending plan it's important for many obvious reasons, but it's also important because it helps you avoid misunderstandings about your money and it makes sure that you're both on board. If you're both working toward a shared plan and a shared vision, you're a lot less likely to spend money on things that don't fit in your budget. If you give your savings a name, maybe trip to Italy or lake house, you're going to be a lot more likely to stick to it. So in your spending plan, you're going to have all the basic stuff you have to pay for, like your mortgage, your rent, your utilities, etc. And then you'll have your variable expenses like groceries and entertainment and your adult allowance if you've decided to go that route. So this is your chance to talk about these expenses and what fits into your budget. So maybe one of you loves to get an appetizer every time you go out to dinner, and that's something you really value. So make sure that makes it into the budget if you're both on board. Or maybe you guys have learned over the past year that you love cooking together and staying in. So maybe you cut back in that area and put the money someplace else. So it's all about deciding, what are your priorities and what goals do you want to achieve? And this is going to be different for everyone. But the cool thing is, very few people sit down and decide how they want to spend their money up front. A lot of times we wind up spending our paychecks on random things, things that aren't even important to us, and then it's gone and we're really not even sure where it went. So this is an opportunity for you to sit down and decide what's important enough to spend money on and what's not. So think about this together, and make a list of goals and things you really want to be able to spend your money on. And you can divide your goals into short-term goals, which would be 0 to 2 years, mid-term goals that would be 3 to 5 years, and long-term goals, which is 5 years or more. So maybe you want to buy a new house, and a down payment would be a mid-term goal that'll take you 3 to 5 years to save for. Or maybe in your long-term goals, you're going to want to save enough money to retire early or take a month-long vacation across Europe. So it's about working together with a shared vision to make sure that you get to do the things that you want to do. And this is going to change over time. As you achieve things or your life changes, you might discover other things that are important to you. So it's a good idea to check in with each other about your goals and your plans regularly. So maybe make it as part of your new year every year. You'll sit down and see how you're doing. Maybe when you make your initial plan, one of your goals is to stay in one of those huts over the water in Bora Bora. But now you've had kids and you decide you'd really rather take an RV trip to see all the national parks, or, maybe you want to renovate your kitchen instead. So each year as things change, look at your list and decide if these are still your goals and if you need to tweak your plan to make things happen. And also, to make sure that you're both on board with your decisions, here are some guidelines to ask yourselves if you have a sticking point. So if you have a decision that you're kind of struggling with, ask yourselves, do you both feel that this decision is fair? Do you both feel like you were heard during the decision-making process? Does this decision match your values as an individual and as a couple? And does this decision support your mutual priorities and goals? So make sure that you're both on board with all of your decisions, or at least willing to compromise. So what if you've done all of this and you're still arguing about money? The first thing that I would suggest is to work on your financial literacy. I'm sure you've all heard about the lack of financial education in this country, and one Google will bring up some really frightening statistics about our collective lack of financial knowledge. And at the same time, our financial needs have become much more complex and much more self-directed. You think about, we've gone from a society that used to use mostly cash, and most people had a pension through their jobs, and their health insurance was part of the work benefits package, to now we do most of our spending on credit cards and debit cards. We pay our bills online, and we're in charge of our own retirement savings and our own HSAs and healthcare spending decisions. So things are a lot more complicated these days. So maybe it's a good time for you and your partner to try to learn more. When either partner lacks financial knowledge, their financial mistakes can lead to arguments and tension and mistrust. On a basic level, everyone should be able to create a financial plan, set financial goals, and manage debt. Now, as you can imagine, there are thousands of books and websites and podcasts to learn, financial information. Maybe your workplace has a financial wellness program. I know in our workplace, our 401k provider has a financial fitness program with a lot of different courses. So there's no shortage of places to find good financial literacy information. And I also recommend a book, as I mentioned before. It's called I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. It's a fantastic book that's very readable, and it gives real life strategies and specific advice about investing and credit cards and credit card debt and paying off student loans and a lot more. And I put the name of the book in the more information document in the handouts so that you can take a look at that later. Another suggestion is to automate your finances. So set up bill pay and automatic transfers. Setting up auto pay makes sure that all of your bills are always paid in full on time. Even one missed payment can result in a late fee and can raise your interest rate if it's your credit card bill. So automating it makes it so that you don't even have to think about it anymore, and it just gets done. And it might keep you from having that same conversation with your partner over and over. Instead of asking if they paid a bill, you're going to know that it's going to pay automatically without either one of you having to do anything about it. So your online banking should have options to set up automatic transfers to savings and other accounts and to pay bills, and it should be super easy to set up. And we have really detailed how to automate your finances in our webinar called Budgets Don't Work, using conscious spending to change your life. So be sure to check that out if you'd like some more information and directions on how to automate your spending. And next, make sure that you commit to transparency. Track your money with a budgeting app like Mint, or You Need a Budget, or a software like Quicken. That way you'll both be able to see your accounts and your spending quickly and easily all in one place. It'll classify your expenses and track your spending so you'll know exactly where your money is going. And it'll make it super easy to find areas where you could cut back maybe if your budget is creeping up. Now, when you first start this, you might feel like you're under a microscope and you're losing your financial independence. But again, remember, this is not about power. It's about transparency. Both of you should be informed and know exactly what's going on all the time. And having access to see your finances at all times might help if one of you has, issues about money anxiety. And then finally, don't be afraid to work with a financial counselor. Your financial stability is one of the most crucial aspects of your life. And, by the time some couples realize that they need help, their money issues have often gotten so big that they can't be solved by simply making a budget together. Maybe feelings have been hurt, trust has been broken, and you might even be wondering if you're even compatible anymore. So a financial counselor can bring the expertise of a neutral party to the issues and help you find middle ground. They can help you with your financial literacy and help you see your spending habits more clearly and help you understand the motivations between your actions. They can help you with your spending plan and give you suggestions on how to cut back if needed and let you know if you're on the right track. Often a financial counselor can be just as valuable as a marriage counselor in relationship issues. If you do work with a financial counselor, though, make sure you work with a professional counselor from a nonprofit agency. And I put some more information about how to choose a financial counselor in the more information handout. So hopefully this was some good information for you and you've learned something today. So I'm going to open it up for questions. You can submit your questions through the chat pane in your control panel. And while we're waiting to see if any questions come in, I wanted to let you know that we do have a first-time homebuyer webinar coming up on March 24th, where we're going to talk about mistakes to avoid when you're buying a house for the first time. And you can register for that webinar at copfcu.com/webinar. Julie, did we have any questions come in?
No, Robin, at this moment, we do not have any questions.
Okay, well, great. Well, I wanted to let you know that this webinar has been recorded, so you should receive an email with the recording, and you can also access it and all of our webinars at our website at copfcu.com/webinars. And thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, if you think of something later, please feel free to email me or call me anytime. And if you have any suggestions for webinar topics that you'd find useful, please let us know. Thank you again for joining us and have a great day.